The role of the data team is to support and facilitate great business improvement. That's about visualizing the business as clearly as you can, and that leads to better insights. The organization's hit problem-solving squad, and the CEO goes, I've got a problem. I need someone to help me think this problem through. And that's playing to the strengths of the data function. We already have these superpowers. We already have visibility of the whole business, and we already are great problem solvers. The core idea here is that this isn't a place which is just for the agent to work. It's a place where an agent and anyone in the business can work together in one place. So they're going to go off and think about that problem. The idea of transparency and collaboration, agile working, everything that it does and brings back into the canvas like this is an object that I can touch and feel and edit myself. I can see exactly how that visual is built. You can edit it yourself, and then the AI will recognize that change and then build that into its context. We could be riffing with this AI together as we think through problems. There's a data analyst, stakeholder with an agent working a problem together live, laying out facets of the problem solve, to help me understand exactly how this all fits together, to tell me the story. It's just amping the paradigm of the canvas and the collaboration, the transparency, and the communication layer with an agent to do that heavy lifting for you, which is really cool.
Don't forget to subscribe to Data Neighbor wherever you listen to podcasts and YouTube, and drop a like and comment below. It keeps us bringing you great content like this. Hey everyone, before we get into the show, we want to announce something really exciting. We're kicking off 2 new completely free learning series, one on AI evaluation and one on agentic analytics. If you head over to dataneighbor.com, you can see the full live schedule as well as get any of the past recordings and free practical resources. We've got a ton of really interesting workshop topics planned, from analyzing product data in Claude Code, to designing your first AI evaluation plan, to creating custom annotations tools, to validating the business impact of AI features, to cracking the data science interview, leveraging AI tools. You'll find the full schedule and everything else at dataneighbor.com. And if you want to go even deeper, we're offering 2 cohort-based live hands-on courses. One's called AI Analytics for Builders, where you'll learn how to leverage AI to become your own product data scientist, become analytically independent, stop waiting on analysts and data scientists to answer your questions. And the other one is AI Evaluations for Product Development, where you can start to actually measure the tangible impact of your AI features on user outcomes to business outcomes. They're both super hands-on, practical, cohort-based courses. You're going to work with us as well as other AI practitioners in the field to learn week by week for 5 or 6 weeks. And at the end, you'll have a really strong understanding of either how to leverage AI to become an analyst or how to conduct the right analysis to evaluate AI features. So we hope you'll join us. Check it out at dataneighbor.com. Now back to the show. Welcome back to Data Neighbor in our new series, The Analyst's New Toolbox. We're meeting with founders, reimagining how data gets analyzed and how decisions are getting made in companies today. So today, we have a really great show for you today. We're joined by Ollie Hughes. He's the co-founder and CEO of Count, which is a platform that's redesigning how teams work with data by making it really collaborative and helping companies visualize their business. Ollie, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Hello, thanks for having me. Yeah, you've got it. You've nailed it. Thank you very much. That's a good introduction.
I took it straight from
Ollie.
your
Welcome.
landing page, just so.
Oh, well, there you go. I give my team full marks for that then.
That's the marketing team or the design team.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thanks for having me. It was great to be here. I love what you do.
Before we kind of get deep into Count, you spent a lot of time deeply inside this problem space, I imagine, seeing firsthand how a lot of your customers and I'm sure other teams and prospects you've worked with across the industry actually work with data and probably where things break. What made you realize that the traditional analytics, BI sort of data viz model needed to be reimagined?
Yeah, I've definitely been tackling this problem for a few years now. I mean, so many things. I guess my background is I went from engineering university to working as a management consultant. And actually what I did there was actually work not in kind of McKinsey land. I went to work in factories. I went to work for companies who the deepest, darkest of Germany, a can making factory. And I would go there as this kind of very green graduate and go and make that factory run twice as fast. And that was a really, as daunting as it sounds, I didn't speak any German. I go into this factory and be like, right, how's this factory work? What's going on with this factory? Where's the bottleneck? What actually is the data what data are you even recording here? And it was a really wonderfully pure problem because you sort of go into a factory, you have to get your head around the whole thing, understand what is very often a very implicit data model, there's systems running, there's things flying around the factory floor and like boxes and stuff, but where it's not collected into one data source. So it's literally like pen and paper, stopwatch kind of stuff a bit sometimes.
Yeah, I
And you got to
imagine.
try and hand crank that machine with data to help you work faster. And often the beauty of it was when you got down to like, okay, this machine is the bottleneck of this whole factory, and this little dial here is the thing stopping this factory make money. Let's just turn it from 2 to 7, and that will make the whole thing magically start making some money. It wasn't quite that simple, but it's that kind of thing of using data to like dig and dig and dig and dig until you find the answer. So I started there, and then I took that mindset with me into like some big companies like Tesco, which is like the Walmart for Europe, I guess. Europe's biggest retailer, I think, still. And also some startups doing data work there. And obviously, they're much more digitalized, so like the data was available, and it was actually fundamentally the same kind of stuff of like using data to improve the business, driving insights, working out what's going on, and then making it better. And then I ended up doing data in a very small consultancy for a bit before starting Count. And I think that it was then that I really was like, this is not right, because I was then at that point not working internally, but I was working as a consultant trying to help this organization I was working in to like make better decisions to improve themselves. And I was finding that I was using these tools like Tableau and Power BI to do that. And I'm just like, this isn't the right tool to make a decision. This is like a tool to see a number again and again and again. Like I'm not actually I'm going to have to I'm going to cut and paste things out of this into a slide deck. There's no dynamicism here. There's no ability to like wrestle with the numbers of my clients. They feel that these numbers are their own, not just my fabrication. How do I do this? This is the wrong tool. And actually, if I'm honest, it was, what it was? It was actually when my co-founder and I co-founder was also called Ollie, just to confuse things. We really started thinking about the business properly when Power BI launched, because I was like, well, I was using like Click and Tableau. I was like, well, this is fun for me, but I'm not able to. It's not really helping me like drive more value to my the way I communicate to my clients. Maybe Power BI, Microsoft will solve this problem. That Power BI was like being rumored, it was going to be launched. This is quite a while ago. I think it was like 2015, maybe when it properly came out. Before that was Power Pivot, and I was like, this is going to be great. And then it launched, and I downloaded it, and I had to start learning DAX, and I was like, this is going all the wrong way. Because everyone's written DAX. You're like, this is not the answer. Not only is it making no difference to like how I present numbers, it's still a dashboard. I'm now writing another proprietary language which no one likes and uses, which is just locking. This is just like fundamentally wrong. So that was that led to the kind of naivety and hubris that Ollie and I needed to sort of start Count and try and work out, is there a different answer? And I think really it was just like this sense of this massive market in this whole big data wave at the time. And like there was absolutely no differentiation when it came to how you were communicating the insights. It was all dashboards with filters. Like there's nothing in there which felt like it was actually moving the needle. There's no innovation in the way that data was being consumed or looked at. And that was really it. It was like, can we find a better way? Is a dashboard really the best way for data to be communicated and worked with? Is there a better answer? And that took us on a horrifically long journey of trying to work that problem out. And here we are now, as you said, with Count, the most collaborative BI tool in the world.
I really liked, it's a great origin story. And I really liked the call you had there around the existing tools, like making it feel like it's not my data. Like it adds a barrier, like whether it's your stakeholders, especially when you're in consulting. I started in consulting as well. And I was not in factories, but I was in some warehouses for telecom companies where they're trying to find basically like, where the hell is all my where's all my cable? Where is all this like stuff that like we're spending tens of millions of dollars on, and it's on like a contractor's subcontractor's some contractor's back of their truck somewhere. And like you said, it's like if you're lucky if you're really lucky if there's an Excel sheet, but like you're also just like lucky if there's a pen and paper. But at the end of the day, like people did kind of know like, oh yeah, it's like over here, that's like on this lot or this lot. Like they had some data model in their mind, and that's like their information that they know. It's like why they're valuable in their job also, and they have their own way of working with it.
Yeah.
And I do find like I built Tableau dashboards for them to say where things are, and people liked it. I think at the leadership level, kind of, but like for like the tactical people working with it, it was like this sudden barrier of like, oh, you just kind of like put this weird like hoops I have to get through to get the information that I actually know and work with. I hadn't really thought about it that way.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. Like it's the visibility piece. They probably already had you probably won't give you much better visibility they already had, maybe a bit better, but incremental. Whereas to the executives, they had nothing, so they love it. Like visibility is the key thing. And I think the journey, as I think about it, was like, obviously I found myself very productive in a certain setting in these factories, just using pen and paper and a stopwatch to like.
Mhm.
You don't need to have fancy data. You just need to make sure it's really, really tangible and really directly to the problem you need. And like, if
Yeah.
you just got information in a kind of a read-only web page, it doesn't necessarily drive any value at all. Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, and yeah, I think we're only just really getting started with the solution. Really, yeah, it's I have, as you can probably imagine, I look at the BI space with an eye of like is it I think if I have a hypothesis, I think the hypothesis that a BI tool, particularly now, is one of the most expensive and lowest ROI software products in an organization, if I'm honest. Like, I just think maybe the CRM, like CRM might be second place, but like definitely the BI tool has a low value add for the price point that they are. And like, because they're solving a problem that existed sort of 20 years ago, which was, I have no data in my organization, get me data at scale into the business. And that's no longer the problem. Like, that's the opposite problem we have. We have too much information now, actually.
Yeah,
So
actually,
the design paradigm we've got is designed for like a 2-decade-old problem of like, get data out there.
yeah.
Seeing
Maybe
the sales
getting-
number of
interesting.
400 people every day is no longer a difficult problem.
Do you think it's a people problem? Do you think it's a tools problem? Do you think it's a mindset problem? Sort of like, if you were to boil down to like the biggest sort of like thing that is, like that's kind of like inhibiting, I guess, the general, I don't know, like use of BI tool in its best way. What is it along these pairs? It could be all of them.
Yeah, so I think it is a bit all of them. I do think that the BI tools are the lack of innovation and imagination what data could be, like what great data workflows look like, is a thing that the BI industry has let people down on, I think, if I'm honest. I think there's definitely part of it. I think so. There's some stats I can give you which I think kind of identify the problem. Like, I think we've worked out on this journey as we've gone and spoken to. I personally interviewed 400 different data leaders on this particular topic of like value of a data team, etc. They tell me that like 90%, they recognize that 90% of the work that their teams do isn't driving any incremental business value. So like, that's a shocking statistic.
Mhm.
So like 90% of the work a data team does on a week by week basis maintains the current status quo performance of the business. Like, tracking sales accurately is taking up 90% of the time. So that means like the ROI of a data team is very low. Like 10% of the time is spent having direct impact on a metric which actually makes the business more profitable, more efficient, more competitive. That's not true in every single team, but that's as I say that static, most people just acknowledge that it's probably true. And that's a shocking number, and it makes data teams a support function, and that is the problem that we've got to fix. And I think that problem is a fewfold. One is, what is the purpose of data team? If not to be a support function, what are the roles which matter most? Obviously, the tooling we've got, as I mentioned before, like these BI tools, bake in the workflow of your support function. You're just there to produce status quo numbers of sales, let the business do their thing. So that perception is a problem, and the tooling doesn't help. So yeah, I mean, so I think it's multifaceted, and I think it's kind of if you'd imagine it, like the fundamental hypothesis or the fundamental problem that the BI industry's been trying to solve is get data into the business. If you unpack what that means for 20 years, it means, yeah, you get support function mentality, cost center mentality for the data team, and the BI tool becomes the inhibitor of a different way of working, because that's no longer the core problem to solve.
Yeah.
So I think that's the unpacking of it, and now it permeates everything that a data industry does, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
So it's pretty shocking. I mean, I do think there's a big problem.
Yeah.
And I now also know, we are working at Count, that there is a definite better answer, like which is amazing. That's been the real excitement. Is like, I also, having done this research and worked with data teams, I know what the best data teams in the world do differently to make themselves not a support function and make that 90% of cost like at least 50-50, if not 40-60, with the majority of what they do is driving value directly to the business. And that's an amazing thing to know the answer to.
Yeah.
And build a tool around. So, yeah.
I completely agree. High knows I have very strong opinions on the very anti-service oriented, support function oriented data teams. And I think it is so hard when you start doing that to get out of it, because I hadn't even thought about the way you do it. Like your tools form around it. So you're getting ingrained in tools that form you as a support function, define you as that. Then So like even if the rest of the org has the mentality of your support function and you get to a point where you're like, hey, I've broken the culture, they don't believe it. It's still like, sorry, they're using all these tools that require you to be a support function. And when they break every week, you're just going to be a support function still. It's such a hard hole to dig yourself out of. And then I think it's also then like people start like assigning that identity to themselves and hiring new people with the thought of that identity in mind. But I would love to hear you said something about patterns there. I mean, I'd love to like kind of dig into that in terms of these teams you've seen who work well, and also those who like where you consistently see things break down. Maybe we already touched on that with the service kind of function, but we'd love to hear about some of those patterns.
Yeah, so I call it a service trap because a lot of the behaviors that we as the data, to be clear, I've come from this too. I've done this all myself. This is not speaking from a position of I've been in all these things myself. So it's not like I'm sitting here like I was always fine. I've learned this and I've worked with some great people who've helped me learn even more. And now we're bringing that into the Count to make Count defaultly a tool which enables you to work in a better way. But it is interesting to know what like these service traps exist because they're things that you think are helping the business, but actually by trying to help you harm them. And that's a fascinating dynamic, right? Because it's sort of like it's satisfying in one way, but it actually doesn't help. So the first, I think there's actually 4 of them. Like I've crudely labeled. I'm sure they unpack in different ways, but like the first one is drowning the business with information. So back to this idea of like the problem that BI tools used to solve was get data into the business reliably at scale. That problem is now no longer the context. Like there's actually more data than people can cope with in most organizations. Every SaaS product gives you metrics. There's spreadsheets all over the place at the highest and lowest levels. Most companies have like a dashboard or more per employee. Like there's just so much information out there.
Honestly,
the dashboard to employee ratio is ridiculous. And so like data team, by trying to serve and give help and trying to give information, particularly if they've been asked to it, they're drowning the business with the complexity and making things confusing. Like that is number one. And like the solution, people think, the solution is to have a governed data layer. No. Because you can have a filter attached to any number of sales and everyone's got their own version of that defined metric. So it can still go very wrong. But that's the first one, like just drowning business information. The flip side of that is them being like an answering machine. So again, like feeling like my only way to drive value is to provide charts. So I'm just going to answer every question the business asks me. I'm just going to turn it around as fast as I can. I'm just like, yes, I'll prioritize, but ultimately the faster I can code, the better. And you can see, by the way, how wonderfully tempting AI is in those two paradigms. Just like, okay, now AI can answer all the chart questions the business asks. And that then gets, I call it the Cambrian chart explosion. We're about to have the situation where there's more charts than we know what to do with. Like information to chart, time to chart is going to explode. And it's just going to make things a lot more confusing if we're not careful. Right? There's a thing about too much information and none of it's valuable. Does that make sense? So you've got drowning business information, answering every question the business asks. And there's a massively vicious cycle attached to that, right? Where if there's too much information in the business gets confused. They ask for a clarifying question like, can you give me this? I can't quite find it, or I don't know where to look. That creates more information in the business. And this is a vicious cycle of like trying to get clarity by producing more stuff, which is really damaging. And then because that's going on, the data team retreat and they spend less time with stakeholders. That's another thing. They put up walls to try and process the problem away, and that's another pain, like removing yourself from the stakeholders, like not getting in. And then the other flip side of that is then like building loads of stuff the business can't see. Like we love tweaking our DBT models. We love optimizing our Snowflake costs, all valuable. But if the business doesn't see that value, then what you're doing is you're baking in your biggest cost, which is your payroll, almost certainly, doing stuff which doesn't drive any incremental value. And your ROI is like hugely lost. So it sounds like a very negative space, but like these are obvious reactions to a problem of like, give the business what they're asking for, try and feel like you're in control by optimizing things you are definitely on control, like your data stack. But we're really not helping the business. We're actually making things worse, and it's getting confusing. And there's moments of brilliance. Like everyone has that analysis which just like cuts through. The CEO's like, oh my word, let's pivot ourselves around this. So it's not like nothing's landing. I'm not saying it's like that, but it's that 90 to 10% ratio is a huge issue.
Yeah.
People often ask me like, what's the most valuable thing? Like, how do I know I'm not in the service trap? And there's loads of ways to measure it, like your dashboard to employee ratio and how much time you're spending doing data modeling and data quality versus like analysis which moves the needle. really that matters is like, does your exec team have 3 examples of where the data team's directly driven value in the last quarter? Like, ultimately, that's the best measure I can give you. Like, simplest but most direct way. Like, do they value you? Do they not only they know that you're directly involved in making this initiative work? That's probably the most important thing you can think about. I've done
That's
a
so
massive long
interesting.
discussion there. You just sat and listened to me very kindly. But yeah, you can tell I'm passionate about it. I really see the problem, and that service support function is a huge problem. A huge problem. And tooling is definitely making that harder. Definitely.
I mean, Ollie, I think you're the first guest that we've had on that articulated that as well as you have, I would say. I think we sort of touched upon it, like, the service orientation of a lot of data teams, and here's how to break it. There is the posture around we have to keep fixing data foundations and data quality and no time for everything else. Like we've got bits and pieces of that, like kind of like, obviously related to the different guests' expertise and things like that. I think this about sort of like sums it up. Probably one more thing I would add is the fact that because of all of these, at the end of the day, we're here to kind of, drive decisions. A lot of the data team is helping the business make decisions. Decisions come from really good questions that are, like that would be hypotheses that we can all test as a company. And then the quality of those actually, I would imagine, actually are informed by the previous historical sort of like questions that people get answers to. And so if for the longest time, it's like, oh, I ask, I get, I ask, I get, and then there's no checks and balances on, hey, that's a bullshit question.
Yeah,
or like
yeah.
that question makes no sense or has no impact whatsoever.
Totally.
Not just the data team, but like stakeholders get very much complacent about the fact that that's all I can get with data. Well, I guess that's not much of value that I see.
I completely agree. So when you look at the way to fix the service trap and break those 4 kind of service trap problems, like what you said there is exactly right, which is like you've got to help them ask better questions. You've got to have a way, you've got to have enough of a purpose, which is more than just generation of charts, to allow them to just say no and say that's not valuable. Like, we need a purpose. That's one of the biggest things I think that's missing in this, and it's I think increasingly essential now. We have like an AI wave coming or already here, which is like, if we don't have a purpose, then we'll be AI'd away, basically. And we don't have one because the data's been a function in a business for a handful of decades at best, whereas sales has been around for centuries, right? We haven't had data around for that long. So it's a new function, and it's been evolving very fast, and it's been a new thing we're all kind of working out. There used to be this kind of like putting CDOs on the board of companies. No longer are they there. Like, where does data sit? There's all these kind of questions. But the better as an industry we can be at saying the data team's role is the following, the easier it is to explain what we should be doing, what we should be doing, and how we should be working. And also then what tools make sense. Like, rather than just buying tools because they're cool, buying tools because they actually drive strategic value to the business, which is really, really important. So I do think a lot of this is about getting the purpose right. And by having a purpose, you can also say no to those low quality questions that you mentioned, how you like. I definitely agree. Yeah.
What I really appreciate the detail you went into around like the pain point and what you've seen that really doesn't work. When did you start to get excited about, hey, I think there's like a better way to do this?
Yeah. I think at the same time, like these problems are like, I think defining the problems. I knew that as I said them, like you've nodded along. You get they're not things that are new. I also think a lot of the things that are like the solution to these problems also exist. I didn't make them up. They're already existing, and they make sense. It's just allowing to be like defined really well. So I can go through them, so it may be helpful. Like, so the solution that I see that the best data team's doing to sort of tackle like the information overload is the idea of like operational clarity. The idea that a data team who's incredibly valuable is the one who's making the business as simple as possible to the rest of the company. Like, that's the idea. Like, you're painting the operating model. You're not just visualizing data, you're visualizing the business and making the business look and feel simple so that everyone understands how they fit, what's going on. And in my engineering mindset, it's like a high signal to noise ratio, maximum amount of clarity for the least amount of information possible. And that's an incredibly powerful thing, because and I've seen it hundreds of times now, where like an executive who gets sent the right report just gets this moment of clarity, this moment of like, oh, I now understand what I'm doing. I understand what's going on. And back to Hai's question about asking the right questions. When you have operational clarity, when people understand what's going on, where the bottlenecks in the business are, how things fit together, the underlying context of the business is so much more improved. they can understand, they can ask better questions of you. They're not asking questions to understand what's going on. They're now asking questions to understand what they need to do to move that needle and that metric better. And so that's the role. That's the purpose of the data team, is to say, we are here to to visualize the business and make the business feel as simple as possible, so we can understand the biggest priorities that need to matter. And if you get that, that is a huge unlock if you get that right, because then everything else falls out of that. Basically, you get better questions. Those questions are more valuable by default because they're like tackling the bottlenecks or the biggest conversion issues or whatever it is. And then like there's more interest in the data. There's more you get more value from the data, and the whole thing just sort of falls out of that. So I can show you some examples of operational clarity, and later on, like I can show you some Count examples our customers have built using Count. But that's one of the biggest parts of the job is like simplification, and growth model visualization, business visualization is the idea. And a dashboard, as you can tell, is horrific at this because it's just a grid of numbers on a page. It does nothing to help you visualize the business. It just visualizes numbers as crudely as you can imagine. And so you can almost see why that tool, it's almost like impossible to do this well with a tool which just puts grids out there. Not saying that dashboards aren't important in certain places, but they're not the best way to drive clarity. Does that make sense? That kind of ring true?
Yeah. For someone who, maybe we can get into a demo a little bit here, but with this in mind, like for someone who's never seen it, like what is Count? What makes it different from those other tools that so many people have been used to over the past, 10 years or more?
Yeah. So Count ultimately is this a kind of we call it like this collaborative communication layer, where the big paradigm shift of Count is that the interface of it is an infinite collaborative whiteboard canvas, we call it. So it's a bit like Miro or Figma if you've used those tools before for like agile creative thinking through the problem. And so that's the interface that the analysts work in, but crucially also majority of stakeholders work in as well. And that's the huge unlock, is that you've got this kind of one space where analysts and stakeholders are working together. And it's one space where both worlds combine wonderfully. So if you look at the biggest problems of any other tool I know of, I'm sure now people will, now they've seen this, will maybe start trying to build it. Good luck. Is like the most data tools have an environment for the data team to build and work and like write code or whatever, and they have a separate space to publish. Like publish at scale, publish numbers, be that a grid of numbers or a data app or some sort of dashboard. And it's that wall, that fact that the data team is separated in a different place and they just work by themselves and they publish results, that makes the communication layer really difficult. The ability to problem solve, work through problems together, to like clarify what the business looks like really well. So the biggest unlock of the Count is the canvas interface, where both sides of the business data and non-business data can work together really well. And so that's the big unlock. The other side of having a canvas which is that flexible is you can use it to visualize your business in a different way. It's not constrained to be a grid of numbers. You can visualize things in many different ways. I can show you actually. I'll just boot up.
Yeah, let's take a look. This is
a very simple
I'm excited
example.
to see it.
So this is actually not in a canvas. I could probably switch that. This is actually a metric tree. This is one of the simplest ways to get clarity, is to like define metrics and define them as a hierarchical view of like what's driving them. How does our business make revenue? Well, it's driven by monthly recurring revenue, churn, and upsell. Like that simple breakdown in itself is quite powerful to see the relationships. And then saying, okay, well, what's churn drilled down to? Well, it's churn rate and churn customers. These two are drivers of our churn revenue going down. And then breaking it down even further, you're using it's the spatial layout of metrics and their relationships to each other, which help you understand how the business fits together.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And this is actually a report you can send out. This actually is a report you can send out reliably. But the power of the canvas is that you can visualize a lot of complicated things very easily. This is another example of we call a metric map, where you've got here a user onboarding funnel. Like, users onboarding to a mobile app. There's an example where you're showing the breakdown of every single step, the conversion rates of the users as they go through their first user onboarding. And this is you've probably seen your product team build this kind of stuff again and again and again to try and like see the journey and see the different stages. But this has then got live data attached to it, so you can understand what's going on. And it's about 60 metrics in one view, which is complicated. But it's the simplest way to see 60 metrics in a page to understand really what's broken and how it works. All driven
so cool,
like a BI tool from a data source, which you can update and refresh and cut and slice as you want.
Yeah, the like screenshot of each of the actual.
And you said these are all live data. So like
Yeah,
people
exactly.
can.
So I could change the
Okay.
date range here. I could add different dimensions or different cuts. This is a kind of example where this might be this was actually an example taken from a custom who was literally doing a project on first like initial user activation, and so they built this to give themselves the view of that problem, where they hypothesize the solution, dig into the numbers, segment by different customers. It could change data, product, design, dev all together, thinking the problem through in this kind of really clear way, and then making a change. So it was like a one-off project where they built this as a one-off piece of work.
And you said this is collaborative, so like other people can all kind of work together in the same space.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's real-time collaborative. So you can have a product manager adding in screenshots and sticky notes, or filtering on stuff. The data analyst could be doing kind of the business logic and making sure that you've got the right data as well. And you can do the whole workflow. So down here, actually, this is actually running off a few different database tables. So you can see down here that the actual SQL that was used to build up these metrics. So if I click on this SQL cell here, you can then see all the numbers that rely on this. Seemingly, this is quite an important cell because it's like permeating through
Connected to
the lineage,
several.
permeate to all these different metrics. But the idea is you're building this up. You visualize that you've got agreement on like what's the core report look like, how we want to visualize these metrics, which metrics do we care about, the definitions. You can then build the metrics in SQL if you want to. Make sure everyone sees the data, agrees it's right, understands the logic. You can take people through the different business logics you've applied so they understand these numbers. It's not hidden away. And then when you want to productionize it, you can then push all this SQL into dbt and put it into a data catalog, into a semantic layer, so then it can be used as a self-serve motion going forwards. So it's a wonderfully powerful way to, again, just work in an agile way, visualize the business, but also visualize all the work the data team does, so that it's not just hidden away. And so you've got this kind of your communication layer where you're collaboratively communicating, thinking through problems, and it's your two peers or three or four people working together as peers through a problem, rather than the data team just being the chart generators who just produce numbers when they're asked.
I mean, now it's starting to click for me with the collaborative element, because I'm just thinking back when I was at Nextdoor. I was working on our notifications team, and this team, like, a lot. If you're on Nextdoor, you're getting a shit ton of notifications. Let me tell you, that is how they get you to the platform. But like, okay, so anytime our usage dropped or spiked, it was like, what's going on, like upstream notifications. And it was like very much something like this, where it was like email versus push. How many do we send? How many do we open? How many do we click? Segmented out by all these different things. Like, how did that compare year over year? And a lot of it was like, we would have, like, when things would go bad, we'd have like these like code yellow things where it's like we're meeting every morning, and people would like draw out all their hypotheses, and I would just go away, like we talked about earlier, and I would just like go and try and get them all in, and I'd come back and then be like, oh no, like actually these other hypotheses are what I mean. And I could just see here where it's like, okay, let's like open up this and go start like grabbing the hypothesis you're talking about, screenshot here, or put it on like, just put a note in there and start connecting the dots yourself. I'll go find like the numbers while you're doing all that. It is definitely bringing so many more people into the conversation. Or like tracking high is like tracking for a new thing. That's like,
Yeah.
the same thing. That's like that whole thing is very much like, okay, going to meet with the prod dev team right here, and we're going to try and exhaust like what happened. But at the end of the day, like, it's going to take many iterations of like go back and forth this meeting over weeks, and then it's not like going to be until we like have some very important thing not work that we're like, oh shit, we did miss this certain tracking thing here.
Yeah, it makes the decision-making workflow very agile, right? Very natural.
Yeah.
And not kind of like two different worlds trying to kind of collide together like this. In a very elegant way.
I think one really smart way of how you sort of like, I guess you call this canvas, right?
Yeah.
Is the fact that most product development teams are extremely familiar with how to work with Figma, or like the flowchart style kind of like workflows and the collaborative nature of it. So there's no need to relearn anything, versus, I guess, if it's all just walls of text or walls of charts in dashboards and whatever, people's brains would hurt trying to figure out like, okay, how do I map this number back to this visually like mapped out journey that we were just talking about. And
totally.
That's
in fact, if I'm honest, I find
cool.
I find the data practitioners are the ones who've got to make the biggest leap. If you see what I mean, like your stakeholders are already working in a tool like this. with not live numbers, they're sort of screenshotting it in. That's the kind of irony. It's the data team who've got to make the shift, and by doing so can become so much more valuable to their business because they're all that amazing work they're doing hidden away in their SQL notebooks and in the IDEs that no one sees or cares about. Suddenly you can show them how great you are. And that's the big kind of cultural shift is like the data from somebody's seen as like these problem-solving rock stars who can like quickly build a chart. Wow, look at all this code you've done, all these different versions you've looked at. I didn't realize you did all this work. Like suddenly you're structuring a problem solve. So, yeah, it's really, that's what I love about it is like, it's that there's a few different light bulbs here. One is when the business sees a kind of an output like this, and they just suddenly go, this is so much easier to understand than a dashboard. This is amazing. But the other one is when a data team, a data practitioner suddenly starts feeling like when they work with a stakeholder in a canvas, they suddenly feel like their importance is just like they're kind of like they can show off a bit, basically. And it's cool. I mean, underlying that is like
they can drive
theory.
the conversations. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
they can drive the conversations themselves.
Exactly, and that's so like there's that's the feel of it. But like the core idea is to not be a support function. You've got to visualize the business clear. You've got to be the owners of how to see the business better. Hence the examples like this. The second thing is you've got to be like the organization's problem solvers, and you can see how, as you mentioned already, how easy it is if you can. Facilitate thinking with data. You already are not, rather than being the person who provides a number to someone else's problem solve, they're thinking about it in their head. Suddenly, like you're structuring the thinking, you're doing that kind of break this thing down different ways, and like you're being valued for more than the person who can write SQL in the room. You're valued because you can think through things well and you can communicate and lay things out clearly. So that's the other level up is like you're actually a problem solver. I mean, don't get me wrong, people can do this without count. Like this is the key idea. Like it's not just about, but count makes that massively more powerful because you can use the space of the canvas to show your thinking and communicate really well. And that reduces time to decision as well. Like that's the other big win is like time to decision is a metric which the data team should care a lot about, and the workflows making decisions is another really important metric.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, like your 2 points around like there just being like kind of information overload, and the whole like purpose of data team is to like simplify the business and the understanding of it. Like, yeah, you can do that. Like we do that. Like but that's like, it's really hard to like be like, I'm going to create a document. I've done all this work and I have to choose like what I'm going to put in here because I can't put 50 graphs in here. And I've worked with people who are like, they make their deck and there's like an appendix with 200 graphs. And I'm like, cool, delete the entire appendix because like that's awesome. You went deep. And like, honestly, yeah, you're probably going to get some follow-up questions from people and it'll be really great to jump to this one. But like 200, no one's going to go through. I did that when I was like beginning, and I still kind of do it sometimes where it's like, okay, I need to like remove all this stuff. Then when someone's going to be like, oh, can we look at blah, blah, blah? And it's like, oh, no, I did look at that. Like, okay, I'll go back and I'll grab it for you rather than having it in this kind of canvas format where it's simple in this way, but you can kind of get that information. Pretty cool.
Yeah,
I haven't
absolutely.
seen anything like this before. It's really neat.
Yeah, we are very different, but good.
Yeah,
it's good.
Very different.
Yeah, we were looking for a different answer, and it's there and it works. And it's a thing which doubles down on the core. If you think about what makes a data, what's the special, what are the special secret weapons or superhero powers of a data team? Like the powers are that the data team, more than anyone, has full visibility of most of the operational metrics of a business. Like we have access to all the data, and so in fact, if we don't know what's going on, then almost no one does. They may kid it. The other people might lie and say they do, but in reality, the data team isn't clear. Then no one else is because the data team is the one who sees everything. So we've got to play to that superpower and be like, well, we're going to make everything else really clear. And also, data teams are great problem solvers, like because we have to sit in both technical and business domains and be able to bridge those two worlds. We're great at problem solving using both levers, and that's a superpower. And so, being a good problem solver for the business and being valued for that superpower is what makes a massive difference as well. So we're just trying to make sure that our goal at Countess is to remove the barriers of tooling which stops the superpowers of a data team to be seen, basically.
Have you seen, from your experience with, I mean, it could be internally too, but with your work with your customers ideally as well, like what kinds of problems have teams just suddenly found are like easier or more natural to work through once they're inside Count?
Yeah, it's quite a few. I think one of the things that's really shocked us, which has been a really interesting data point, has been people just using it just internally as a data function, like just the ability to sort of, one of the use cases of Count is it's a DBT IDE. You can
Interesting.
use it for like laying out DBT models in a two-dimensional space and seeing lineage and collaborating in real time over like bugs and how to fix it, how to refactor. That's an incredibly
Bugs, yeah.
powerful use case. Like SQL laid out two-dimensionally is kind of really cool. And like seeing the lineage between the models and like spitting out CTE so you can see each CTE's result and working through the problems. That has absolutely, no need do people share that with the business, but that's just an incredibly efficient way to communicate within a data function and getting on the same page. That's a use case which has been interesting to see and like as a real point of value we often see. And then, as I said before, I think it's mostly like the biggest points of value are the business reacts when they see a clear like metric tree and go, oh, this is great. Like I understand what's going on. This is cool. Like that's an interesting problem. What's going on there? And like that question is the gold dust, right? That's the question which is like, I'm going to go double down on that question now. I'm going to show you how to problem solve on that question. And that creates the feedback loop of like value generation, which is really what data teams should be doing, is driving people to good decisions by better contextualization of what's going on, digging into the problems that are obvious now to fix and solve, and helping them make a decision quickly towards it. So, I mean, it's nothing rocket science in one way. It's just efficient communication, better way to visualize the business and metrics, and then a better way to collaborate and problem solve rather than this kind of big wall between the two worlds that stop that happening.
Yeah, I'm sure it spawns so many conversations that would never have happened before. Just like you said, like someone's able to actually get in there and just see something they just wouldn't have seen before. It would have been hidden, totally abstracted away, which is sometimes part of like, doing some of the analyses that we output is like, hey, this thing might be like kind of wrong, but I just want to get like these people around like an artifact to start talking in a certain way. Like I'm not going to solve this thing right now. And maybe like the way I'm thinking about it is totally off base, but just like spawning some conversations is it's a really nice thing to like have that kind of brainstorm around.
Totally. And this is back to the unpacking of like the problem of being a support function. Is one of the unpackings of that is you're kind of expected to be a bit more of a waterfall development process. You get given input output machine says like, go build this, I come back and result. So it's the workflow of a support function is naturally more waterfall like, input output. So when we build reports, most people go away, like get a spec, maybe do a bit of a scoping, go back and do some data modeling, put it into a BI tool, build a report, and fingers crossed it's perfect. It never is. And that's a waterfall development process, right? That's a waterfall development process. Better ways, as you said, Shane, is like, hang on, okay, let's got your requirements. Let me just give you a few rough tables. Do these columns make sense to you? Do you want these? Like, these are the ones you want? Like, let's get something rapid, so you feel like you're what this thing, how I'm building this thing for you. You're invested in the process, and by doing that, you're going to get it quicker. You're going to trust it more, and I'm going to not waste my time doing things that no one cares about that we didn't quite get right. The value add way of working is the agile way of working ultimately, because you're validating and you're doing it you're collaborating on it together, and it's not just the data team just does what I'm telling them. It's like we're in this together, working as partners. Yeah, lots of facets to this propositional change, right? This like what's the data team's proposition? Way more collaborative, way more communicative, way more agile. The value that you're bringing is more obvious because you're problem solving and you're visualizing things better for the business.
Yeah.
And really, what you're doing here is just like you're the facilitators of like business improvement. That's your higher level function. If you're doing those things well, you're going to be helping the business to see opportunities, find solutions, make decisions quickly, and then obviously monitoring if it worked. And that's the experimentation cycle, which you're ultimately doing, trying to drive, not just at like an A/B testing level, but like strategically, right? Strategically, you're facilitating the business to understand itself, find solutions, and make decisions. And that's really the role of a data team. And if we know that's the role, we get it, then suddenly like all the things we do, why we exist, how our role changes when AI can write SQL for us, like becomes so much less scary and so much less threatening, because we can now like buy tools to make that job better rather than buy tools we know is going to take away half my work today, but I don't know what I'm going to fill that time with. So like we've got to get that purpose right. Otherwise we're going to be replaced because we only think we're here for the low value add SQL junkies tasks.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into the future, actually. But before that, I want to hear what sort of feedback did you get from your customers, those who sort of like tried out Count, have integrated it in their workflows, in their businesses, and like what have you heard from them in terms of the changes before, after, in terms of just the kind of like the pain points that you talked about, and also like quote unquote kind of like the impact that or the shift in in perception of the data teams? What have you seen there?
Well, there's loads of great stuff. We love it. We love talking to customers. Customers give us, they also love when customers give us loads of feedback and how to make it better. So I think the big win is that we hear them say the business user works with us differently. Like that's ultimately the biggest thing. Like that the CEO loved that metric tree and is asking us better questions. Like the CFO is leaning in more because finally they've got a different way to see the business than they have for the last 20 years. And it's always been, no matter what BI tool they've used, whatever company they're in, it's always a dashboard. Like now it's actually a visually different thing they can engage with. So there's excitement there. The data team loves that they can give that answer to the business. They love that they feel that they can think through their own workflows. There's actually, the canvas is great for just thinking through stuff. Anyway, if you've ever used like a notebook, like an Anger, you get to like 100 cells in a notebook. It is difficult to work out what's going on. Like the ability to spatially lay things out, like just modularizing things and like having things over there, like just helps you think through your complexity. Your cognitive load is lower, which is really cool. Just as an individual, but then obviously the power of doing that collaboratively is really powerful. Yeah, so I think those are the big benefits. People rightly say like, oh, hang on, but the canvas gets quite messy. I'm like, yes, it does, because thinking is messy. And so it's okay if you've got a representation of your thoughts. That's not great for a necessary presentation, but if it helps you get to an answer faster in a messy way, and that you can simplify and clean up, which is great. Like that's what you want. Like you want something which is not getting in the way of you thinking quickly, communicating well. That's not the ideal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think for a long time, like all these companies around dashboards are talking about like democratizing data, but it's not really democratization of data. It's data visibility for sure, but like this feels like true democratization of data where like more and more people can leveraging it. And I've kind of been like bringing on this bell a little bit lately is like with like AI product development coming out, like I think data science is actually going to be really, really important because of the kind of like non-determinism of these models that have like infinite like error failure modes. It doesn't really matter as much like how great these models anymore. It's going to be like in your product, is it actually working? Because all your customers and users are coming in with this like really higher grade of skepticism than they did before. Like trust and understanding now becomes very important, which is like what data science provides, which is what tools like this provide. But it's also like, I think a skill that like, it's not going to be just for data scientists anymore with, all these like AI coding or I'm just like, it's not even like the coding stuff too. Sometimes it's just like the chat and being able to like converse and like learn like statistics, what a p-value is simpler in your terms as like a product manager or designer. I think a lot more people are going to be empowered to be doing data science themselves too. And so maybe I'd love to get a bit into kind of like the future of Count and how like you guys are thinking about like leveraging AI and kind of like opening this up for other folks.
Yeah. I think, I mean, we absolutely, we feel really privileged because I think we feel like we have a better answer for how data should work in an organization. Now we're doubling down using AI to do that rather than doubling down the wrong paradigm, if that makes sense. Like I said, I mentioned before, like there's a real risk that you can use AI to get even more of the support service traps things happening where you just got more chaos, more mess, lower trust. The data team are just even seen more as a support function. That's not what we want. So if you put AI will just amplify anything. So if you amplify the wrong problem, it'll amplify the wrong problem. So I think we've not been quick to bring AI into Count because we wanted to make sure we got the new paradigm right and then layer on and amplify a better way of working. But it's back to your point, Shane, about like the height of like, I think absolutely right. One of the things I'm really excited by is that I hope people, coders or not, will care more about the art of analytics and less about the syntax and think more about statistical relevance and like think about all the stuff that if we're honest as data practitioners, we're never drawn to like statistical error bars and like who's got a KPI report in there like for their CEO who's got error bars on it, right? Surely we know that's relevant, but we never ask for it and it's confusing. So like there has to be a level up of like that by not having to deal in the weeds as much, regardless of your level of expertise, you can level up on the craft. That'd be an awesome outcome, wouldn't it? That'd be an absolutely brilliant outcome. So I think that's what we're already seeing that. We're already seeing people come to us, like finance teams are coming to us and saying, look, we don't need to learn SQL anymore because your agent's doing SQL for us, but we want to think about more like how to think critically, or how to problem solve. How do you do problem solving well rather than just guessing ideas and throwing them on the page? And like, that's so much more valuable for the data team to be the best problem solvers, like to be the people who actually get problem solving really well. That's what I mean. Like when you know the purpose, you have that kind of sense of high level vision for what data team does. You can double down on those attributes. That's the exciting stuff. But yeah, I can show you. I can show you the agent if you like. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
We're bringing. I think. By the time this is has gone out, I think it's available right now. Is the hope. So that'd be cool.
Head
So you'll be
over
one
to
of the
Count,
earliest to see it.
everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Link in the show notes.
Let me share it with you. I in many ways, in some ways, it's exactly the same idea as if it was already been looking at, but you just get an agent to be there with you. So here's the canvas. This is the canvas here. It's the canvas we was looking at before, where you can still yourself add in sticky notes. I could draw a face, and I can write SQL in here as well. So like this is the key idea here, is that this is not a place where so you can drag in like assets from your data warehouse, or whatever, and you can run against the data warehouse. The core idea here is that this isn't a place which is just for the agent to work. Like we've been talking about collaboration, one layer. It's a place where an agent and anyone in the business can work together in one place. So if I bring in the agent, which is this little box here, it will add itself in. And I can say, please look at this semantic layer of orders that I've got here, like it's I think e-commerce business. And the agent will suggest some questions, but I can also speak to it and say, I can speak to it. I wouldn't say to it, because that's not so helpful. I will speak to it properly. Hey, I've heard that some issues going on in Chicago. Can you help me understand if there's anything wrong in Chicago? What could be the cause? And see if it's actually performing worse than any other city in our customer base. So I've spoken to it, given it a prompt, and it's now going to go off and think about that problem. So here we go. Now, the cool thing about the canvas straight away is because you've got space, you can actually have more than one agent working at once. I can come over here and ask this agent something bit more bounded, like, hey, show me sales over time in New York. Stupidly basic. You could do that in a drag and drop query. So I'm not expecting that to be particularly a wow moment. But what is cool about the canvas, what is powerful, is that back to this idea of transparency and collaboration, agile working, everything that it does and brings back into the canvas like this is an object that I can touch and feel and edit myself. So here you go. It's brought back sales over time in New York, like I asked. But I can see exactly how that visual was built. I can see exactly... I can change it myself to count. Not that would be a particularly useful query, but you can edit it yourself, and then the AI will recognize that change and then build that into its context. I can also still collaborate with this, right? So if you were in the canvas with me, you could also see the exact lineage of my conversation with the AI, add your own comments to it as well, and we could be riffing with this AI together as we think through problems. So already in our customers, we're seeing our customers sort of working completely synchronous, where like there's a data analyst stakeholder with an agent working a problem together live, and there's absolutely no feedback loop. Right? There's no like go away and do some work and come back, even as, because it's just done straight away. And so here you go, it's digging a long way into this problem in a way which is transparent, collaborative, and visually much more easy to express. So back over here with Chicago, you can see it's been plodding along here. You can see it's like digging. So it's got a Chicago overview, and then it's broken that down to like product and category analysis, and it's it's using the canvas just like the metric tree, laying out facets of the problem solve to help me understand exactly how this all fits together, to tell me the story using the layout of the canvas. So it's just amping the paradigm of the canvas and the collaboration, the transparency, and the communication layer with an agent to do that heavy lifting for you, which is really cool.
It summarizes the insights too, I see.
Yeah, absolutely. So it summarizes here's the key findings of Chicago. Losing some money. It's ranked 7th in sales, but it's losing money, and it's excessive discounting as they're destroying the profit. So this is I intentionally gave it a very ambiguous question, so it's gone broader, and you can see it's exactly what it's doing. It's looking into different facets of the problem.
That is
breaking
so
it down,
cool.
critical thinking. It's gone deeper where it can to understand what exactly is driving the loss. It seems to be office supplies. And then it's summarizing that back up the top. And if you're a McKinsey management consultant or anyone who's a critical thinker, this is the way to break a problem down to chunks and then report back. So when it's ambiguous, it goes broad. And when it's specific, it goes narrow, just like here. But then you're not left alone. It's not a black box. Everything is editable, auditable. It's not doing anything that you can't see or interrogate or check it's right. And most importantly, you can do this as a team exercise, which is back to that decision, time to decision, problem-solving mentality that you need, which is that you don't want loads of people asking agents single-player questions, getting answers, and they're not having a clue what's really going on in the business or what to do with that information that you've created.
Yeah, the broad question, digging deeper, like why, like going over and over is just like, I'm also just like, man, it's kind of just also nice for like teaching people how to ask questions, being like, I mean, I know it's AI, but it's kind of like, I hope it's not going to replace folks, but it's like, it's not a replacement thing. It's more just like, hey, look, now I'm seeing this thing, and every time it drills down and it like spreads out the different drivers, as I approach a problem myself, like I should kind of be like thinking that way too, which is, we all know like we should do it, but for some reason, like it just doesn't happen a lot of the time. And that's how you get caught in those like back and forth weekly meetings, like returning the return questions. And here it's just happening. You're skipping so many steps, like so many of those turns.
Yeah, it goes very deep. We're always been amazed. It's much less. I mean, I was actually I'm already at the point where like it goes further than I would go myself in the time available to me. So that's pretty powerful. And
Yeah.
you can see how a combination of this kind of problem solving ability and root cause analysis done in a collaborative environment where you can get to a conclusion quickly, where you can all trust it's done the sensible methodology, that it's given. It's not just like a PNG you can't read. It's actually giving you you literally can see the live query it's written and exactly what dimensions it's used, combined with a metric tree where you can see the business properly see the business clearly and the humans understand what's really going on. Those two combinations together give you rapid improvements.
Yeah.
And it just, again, the role of the data team is still to make sure that the agent is giving you that clarity, helping you problem solve quickly, and also helping you visualize the business. It's cool. It's cool.
Really
Very
cool. Really cool. Yeah, definitely something we've been looking at a lot of different AI powered data tools, and obviously we've all worked with like many different data tools over our careers, and this is something I think for the first time where it's like, I mean, there's definitely a leap from like dashboarding to kind of like agentic analysis and like notebooks and stuff, but this is something where it's like, wow, this is very different way of working. It's pretty cool. I know we're getting to the top of the hour here. We've already taken a lot of your time. It's really, really amazing, Count. Maybe just to leave our audience, any advice you'd leave them with in terms of like, and I know you've touched on this already, but like the skills or mindsets you think are going to matter most for analysts and data teams moving forward in a world where sure AI is part of it, or maybe these like more collaborative ways of working are part of it.
Yeah, well, I think I am convinced that the role of the data team is to support and facilitate great business improvement. And I know that the way to do that, from what I've seen empirically, is that's about visualizing the business as clearly as you can, like visualize the growth model of business. The business can see itself with better, because it has a better context to work in, understands what's going on better, and that leads to better insights. You're helping them think. And then allows you to move into that kind of problem, being like the organization's hit problem solving squad. You want to be the person the CEO goes, I've got a problem. I need someone to go and like help me think this problem through. And that is a great place to be. And that's playing to the strengths of the data function. We already have these superpowers. This is not, I don't think actually, we can always get better at this, but the key is that this actually is something we're already great at. We already have visibility of the whole business, and we already are great problem solvers. It's just about making sure those skills are seen and valued by the business. I think that's the message, that we already have these skills we need for the future. We just need to make sure they're on display and they're recognized. Part of that is defining that. That's what we're good for.
Yeah.
Like the purpose, is the part of it. And then all the way is just making sure we're working in a way which amplifies that, and prioritizing those elements of the work and not getting lost in the weeds is super important. Yeah, I think that's my final word. I think. I hope that makes sense to people. It can feel quite scary right now, like where does AI? But I think knowing your purpose and where you're valuable and what your superpowers are, I think is a huge part of the answer. And you can, to be clear, not to do us out of any new signups after this thing launches. You can do this stuff without Count. Like I am not. As much as I've obviously built Count to enable this, like I know there are teams out there who are doing a good job of this already with the tools that they're stuck with. So I don't want to make it sound like you've got to. Just to make sure I really want people to feel they can be empowered to do this today and make a change. And obviously we can help, but go do it anyway. Like, please don't wait.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Where, I guess last thing, anything else you want to kind of shout in terms of like where our audience can follow your work or follow Count's work, stay up to date with what's going on?
Sure, absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Ollie Hughes. I'm the CEO of Count. Count.co is our website. You can actually sign up for free to Count. Like you can start playing with this thing with that. There's a free tier with the agent built in. So crack on and with that. But yeah, a lot of what we're doing, what we're talking about, we run off Count.co and our blog and our like workshop series. And on LinkedIn is where I usually post my random thoughts when I'm sort of on the train or somewhere.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll be posting on LinkedIn. So find me there.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming, Ollie. This was really cool. Like I said, very Yeah, I think this is the first time we're like, all right, this is something we have not seen before. So to our audience, if you enjoyed, please give us a subscribe, a like, but more importantly, check out the show notes, go check out Count, drop any comments and you have for us or for Ollie. And thank you for watching. And thanks again, Ollie, for joining us.
Thank you,
You're
Ollie.
most welcome.
Thanks,
Thanks you
everybody.
both for having me. It's been really great.